right. So without further ado, we're going to welcome Sam Lake from Remedy.
Thank you.
Yeah, sorry.
Hello, Games Now. Thank you for having me. Thank you for inviting me. I'm the creative director at Remedy. We'll talk about Alan Wake 2, but let's just very quickly do some background. Remedy was founded in '95, a while ago, and I wasn't there right at the beginning, but a couple of months later, and I came in from the invitation of Petri Järvilehto, who was one of the founders of Remedy. He knew that my passion lied in storytelling and writing, and when Remedy needed texts for the first game, Death Rally, he asked if I could come in and write them. At the time, I was at the Helsinki University studying the English language and literature. So I always imagined that or what I really wanted to do was write novels. And here I am, 28 plus years later, and a few games, and yet to get to novels. But it's been an interesting journey. I see myself as a storyteller, and at Remedy with our games, we've been exploring within the context of action games, storytelling in different forms, trying out different things, exploring how to push it further. And more through the years, I feel with Alan Wake 2 especially, bringing in different mediums into a game experience and using them, combining them in new ways has been something that I feel we've gotten into something new. These days, my role is creative director, but very much still I love to write and lead a writing team. Alan Wake 2. We shipped our latest big game a couple of months ago, towards the end of 23. There is always nervousness having worked on something for many years. This time around it was a bit over 4 years of actual project, and of course, the first Alan Wake game came out 2010. Ever since I wanted to do a sequel and tried it many times, it's a complicated thing to get the funding and right partners and all. So it took a while, and now it's been 13 plus years, and now we have the sequel. Always nervousness on how it will be received. Of course, we have passion over something that we are working on, but you never know. The reception has been very, very positive, and I feel very, very proud about what we achieved with this latest game. It feels to me like many strands that we've been exploring and trying out through the years kind of found sort of a culmination in Alan Wake 2. So we'll talk about that, but as a starter, let's check out one of the trailers of the game.
In a horror story, there are only victims and monsters, and the trick is not to end up as either. But trapped by the genre, We're all ripped to pieces along the way.
No! Welcome. We have a great show for you here tonight. Alan Wake, one of my all-time favorite writers, and guests on the show. He's here to talk about his latest book. Initiation tells the story of a fictional writer named Alan Wake, who is trapped in a nightmare, desperately trying to find the manuscript of a novel he has forgotten he's written.
Did you write these pages, Mr. Wake?
I'm trying to remember it.
You're the killer, the cult leader.
No! You've got the wrong man! It's my fault! He got out!
Wake has a double. Where is he now?
I don't want to be in the story, just write me out of the story!
Yeah. So yes, as you can gather, Alan Wake 2 is our first survival horror game. A lot of horror elements in it, and a lot of very story-focused experience as well.
Okay, so let's start. Let's make ourselves comfortable. We have a live player, Nestor, for getting us the naked guy crawling from the lake.
Wonderful.
On the background, so maybe we can get
Wouldn't
that.
have it any other way.
Exactly. So instead of like a huge big fire on the back of us, we will get this darkness as a kind of a backdrop. So thanks for joining us, Sam. You
Thank
just
you.
came from DICE.
We were trying to make this happen for a while.
Yeah.
feel. It's been busy times.
Yeah, so wonderful positive problems of going around the world and picking up some prizes and getting great reception for the game.
Yeah, it's been nice.
Yeah. So you started from 1995 with your slide, or 1996, but let's go back in history. As kind of a warm-up for this chat, is that where did the little Sam or Sami back in the day, where did you start it? Like, where did you get this inspiration or your passion to writing? Where did it start?
Yeah, it's a good question. I remember loving books and for sure loving films and TV from very young age. My father used to read me Tarzan books as bedtime stories, and I kind of feel
At
that.
what age?
I kind of feel that probably I was slightly too young for it because it was scary, but I loved it, and that has been kind of like something that I've felt like through the years that for me, when something feels a bit too much, like a bit too scary, there were these growing up, these experiences with fiction where it felt slightly too scary, or at later age, like I fell in love at university with postmodern writing, and there my feeling was, I'm not quite smart enough to understand this. But all of these experiences have always felt really, really stimulating to imagination and somehow firing me up to kind of like think about it. And that process of being inspired to think about something and is something that I feel is critical for creative work. But yeah, like Tarzan books and I can still remember some scenes very crystal clear in my mind out of that.
From the books,
the dark jungle and the great apes and all. But yeah, that was the thing. I loved reading. I was reading a lot. I I somehow stumbled on the 5th grade, like 12, 13 years old, in Matinkylä library, and into the grown-up section, and discovered Lord of the Rings.
Classic.
I don't know why I found it on the shelf, because nobody pointed it to me, but I absolutely fell in love with it. Read it like from cover to cover 4 times. In like when I got to the end, I started from the beginning, and that was a big moment of inspiration to me, and I fell in love with fantasy, and then discovered both computer games, like Commodore 64 was my gaming machine, first one, but also then tabletop role-playing games, and around the tabletop role-playing games was where I started writing also, and in English, because like everything, more and more I discovered growing up and being a teenager, that everything that I was excited about and loved was in English. Role-playing games, comic books, discovering that actually the small selection that was available in mid-80s in Finland, that if you switch the language, then there was an endless amount of comic books and fantasy books and everything. So, yeah.
Yeah, on the other side, very little in Finnish. Yeah.
Yes, yeah. I mean, these days it's much better, like say, young adult books or fantasy books that have been translated into Finnish. But back then, it wasn't a huge amount.
Yeah. So to go to the writer's role, there's been quite a lot of like development for the past years into narrative design and writers. But you started very early. I picked it up from your slide that the first one was texts, not really writer role.
Yeah, can't really say that Death Rally would have been a game with a story. I did try to add some, like in the bottom of the screen, because there was some room. I remember it was really strict back then. It was, we have 3 rows and this many characters, and this is a black market shop. Can you write the text to that? But yeah, we had empty space at the bottom of the screen, and I was like, this must be 10 rows. And can I write a bit of a story there? And everybody was, whatever. So I wrote a bit of a story into Death Rally even. But afterwards, then I was pushing story, and when out of the many game protos that were being worked on, what ended up being Max Payne started going forward and happening, I was advocating and feeling that you can totally tell a story in the context of an action game, which hadn't really been done. There had been stories in games for sure, but not really in an action game context. And yeah, that's how it started.
It was a big thing that we were able to skip the story parts back in the 90s, I guess. But the quality of writing wasn't that great. Was there a game before Max Payne that inspired you somehow, that this is actually now interesting and I could do that too?
I mean, there were plenty of games growing up, computer games that I passionately loved. On Commodore already, like Ultimate Series, role-playing games overall, with story, even going back to the text adventures and all, I did enjoy them a lot, and just the idea of an actual world that you can dive in and explore was always really exciting to me.
I guess we got out of the lake, so we can start talking about Alan Wake 2.
Yeah.
But also like your other writing roles. Like how does it, like we know sort of like what other people do in the game development, like developers specifically use Unity or other engines to make their codes, and then the artist maybe use Photoshop or Maya. But what does a writer do? Like, what are your tools? How does it look like when you do your writing?
There are different phases in the project, and it starts with story idea. I love whiteboard as a tool. I really love to see a bigger picture sketched out, kind of starting with a mind map or doing a line and dividing it into a 3-act structure, and kind of we talk about crazy wall, kind of this mad scientist lab.
Exactly, yeah.
And at times, like if I, like in our writer's room for Alan Wake 2, we had 2 big whiteboards on opposing walls, and then 2 on wheels that were 2-sided. So 6 whiteboards in the room, full of scribble.
That is a little bit crazy.
And then when something is no longer relevant, we wipe it, and soon it's filled again. But it's very good for you to be able to see a lot of it in front of you when you are thinking about it. So very practical, like and old school. I do use notebook, just like writing notes, especially early on, a lot. And then out of that comes a synopsis or a treatment, and that's just a Word file. And the actual screenplay, we still at Remedy use Final Draft, simply, so screenwriting tool, which is not quite made for non-linear content. And our solution, especially now in Alan Wake 2, is that we just have a lot of separate screenplays. For a mission, we have the critical path screenplay, then we have a separate for gameplay conversations and optional content, and we are dividing it into different parts. The actual writing happens with that, and then that's converted into our in-house tool, which then actually connects it like down the line into audio files and things like that. But the actual writing is done in Final Draft for the screenplay.
Right. What kind of tool would you like, if there isn't that many perhaps tools for the writers, but I'm sure that there's more to develop currently. So what would be the things that you would like to see as a game art, as a creative director in games?
Yeah, we are working, like Remedy from the beginning has been also a technology company. Like we've always had our own game engine, and with that tools for it, and obviously, story being a big part of it, timeline editor for cinematics, and just a narrative tool for handling the whole pipeline, we have certainly been worked on, and again, kind of now going forward as a new initiative, the ultimate tool would be combining all of this, so that you can just use one and have everything there. But it's also being very, a screenwriting tool or just your text editor, the functionality, there is surprising amount of functionality that you never think about because you are just used to working on it. And when it's gone, it's suddenly very painful. So kind of just basic fluency of how do you do a screenplay is a needed part. And also then there are different customers for the tool. From my perspective, writing, but then narrative designers who take that material and implement it, and you know, performance director working with the actors, and the actors usually are used to operating on a screenplay when they are learning their lines and being, you know, recording material, shooting material. So all of these different sides need to be taken into account, and if something is missing, then the tool isn't really helping, like, for everybody.
And it's a lot to ask for one tool to do all of it.
It is.
So let's go back 13, 14 years ago. How do we count it? Why did, like, this is a classic question, of course. why did it, like, you already a bit teased this, but why did it take so long for Remedy to make the Alan Wake 2 after the first one?
Yeah. Well, games that we make, many games these days, are massive projects, and many things need to click into place for a project to happen, starting with funding, and also, like, taking a step back and looking games as an industry. There is this kind of like constant fluctuation and pendulum swing on what are the publishers interested in, what does their portfolio look like, and what feels to be like this is the direction that industry is moving in, games are moving in, this is where the audience is. And I do remember back when the first Alan Wake came out, there was this feeling that, you know, single-player, story-driven experience back then was seen as, yeah, maybe the future is not there. And when we were pitching Alan Wake 2, there wasn't that much interest for it. Or let's say also the deal terms back to us were something that we felt that we don't, you know, we could have probably gotten it made back then if we would have given up the ownership of the franchise. And we were not interested in that, so we ended up doing a different game. But Alan Wake was very dear to me, and we left the poor guy in the dark place at the end of the first game in a big cliffhanger, and the intention was always to come back for him.
Right.
So I've been trying through the years, and we've been trying basically between every game project. We've come and revisited, recreated a new version of it, new concept based on the previous learnings from all the projects, and going around and like seeing if there is interest from one of the big publishers to partner up with us, and so there was one immediately after the first game, one after Quantum Break, one in the middle of Control, and then finally at the end of Control, that version.
So how many? 4 or 3?
Yes,
3 Alan Wake 2s that we are not able to play.
Yes, yeah, at least, probably
Yeah.
a couple more on some level.
Yeah.
But yeah, so finally, time was right, and from the franchise perspective also, we had gotten back the publishing rights for the first game, so we were able to make a remastered version of it and offer it to, the original one was on Xbox and a bit later on PC, but for remaster we could make it on PlayStation and on Switch as well, and then we were really excited about the idea of a Remedy connected universe, which combines all of our franchises into one universe. So Control revealed that it exists in the same world as Alan Wake does, and we used the DLC that we created for Control to do this kind of a crossover event, setting up Alan Wake 2. So there were a lot of these from different directions, a lot of things happening that just clicked into place, and then we were finally making Alan Wake 2.
Transmedia trend and kind of connected universes is a bit of a kind of a big thing now.
Yeah.
But you've probably been thinking about this for quite a long time. It's not a recent trend. So maybe walk us through a little bit. Of course, we can understand it's fascinating to do that, but specifically for you, why do you want to create interconnected games and the kind of universe that has all the narratives together?
From story perspective, I've always loved idea of a deep story or a layered story with a lot of different aspects in it and different meanings in it. I remember being fascinated about a concept of an Easter egg in games, for very, very long time. There was this trend to put in nods and winks and kind of jokes into the game that were pointing out from the game world to other things, and that felt fascinating to me, and we did some of that early on. But then also I started thinking that this could have a kind of a deeper meaning, and not just as a joke, but connecting these things on some level, and somehow, I don't know really how it is for other creative people, but I can't help it in my head on some level, things are connected. I like certain themes, and they evolve through time and these ideas. So pointing back to some of the earlier ones somehow feels natural, and somehow when we got to work on the first Alan Wake, it and finally, after a lot of hard work, found the idea that the main character is a creator, he's a writer, and then thinking about that, to me, it felt like an exciting idea to take what Remedy has done, kind of Remedy's journey, and make it also, on metaphor level almost, Alan Wake's journey. So we had achieved huge success with Max Payne, and then we were turning to something else, and we struggled for a long time discovering Alan Wake, and it was suddenly really, really hard to kind of nail down the game that we want to make. And Alan Wake as a character then is a successful writer who has been writing this kind of a hard-boiled detective fiction, and he wants to move on. So he kills off his cash cow successful character, and now I'll do something really artistic, and then he hits a wall and can't do anything and slides into this horror story. So there is a parallel in this, and that just felt really, really exciting to me as an idea back then. So this idea of connecting on some level, like our stories, has felt natural, and I've been excited about it. So when we finally were in a position of having two franchises that are owned by Remedy, then I felt that yes, let's. And this was discussed a lot with Mikael Kasurinen, who is the game director on Control, that how do we kind of create this bigger universe and connect these things. Yeah.
One of the kind of basic principles that I've heard, like in a writing class, is that write about something that you know. So how much of Alan Wake is Sam Lake?
Yeah, this question gets asked a lot. I think that yes, like always in all of these stories, there are a lot of elements that come from the writers. Like you know, even here we have a couple of writers working together, and I feel that everybody puts in from themselves or their viewpoint, like somehow just how you understand the world, how you look at the world, your memories of, you know, bits and pieces of certain people or certain things that have happened, places you've been in, your emotions. It's this kind of a puzzle, fragmented thing that you put in. I don't think that specifically in Alan Wake's character there is any more of me than in all of those characters. Different parts used in different ways and in the world and in the ideas. I think it's a good point. You know, you should use things that you know or something that you are interested in as much as possible. But usually, like, well, this character is you. It's not that simple. Like it's more complex than that.
Do you feel struggling in writing what Alan Wake goes through? Like of course, probably not at the same kind of dark places level, but there must be some struggling still that you can draw from.
Of course, like there is always struggle, like in everything in life. I have never experienced the kind of a total writer's block that we built the idea of first Alan Wake, especially.
Are you afraid of that, or does it?
No. I mean, there are times when you struggle and you feel that I don't have a solution to this. I don't know what happens next. I don't know how to solve this. I've learned through the years that your subconscious mind does a ton of work for you. Like I guess it's also like you end up training your mind to do the work that you do through the years, and the answer always comes. I've learned to trust the thing that even if I don't have it now, I just need to spend time on this. Or even when I'm actively thinking about this, most likely the answer comes to me in the moments when I'm not actively thinking about this.
Yeah.
You know, just almost like resting your mind against the problem, and it gives in, and the answer comes, like usually sooner than later.
Yeah. I wanted to ask a thing. It kind of goes together with another question I want to ask, but how much in the writing process that you talked about that you use the tools that are more for linear stories, but how much of the story is like written before the production, and how much of the things then you have to change and kind of iterate on together with the team?
Yeah, it's a very good question. There is a lot of iteration in making of a video game. It's a very complex form where many different departments are doing a lot of work that needs to then click and come together. And because of that, it's always a back and forth conversation and iteration. I've been wondering about like trying to think about entertainment industry and honestly thinking about the experiences, the types of experiences we do. I don't think that there is a more complicated form of entertainment when it comes to making it than video games. Like it has everything a TV show or a film has, but then it's animated because it's in engine and it's interactive and all of these sides coming together. I like to go in with a story. So I do feel for experiences that we do that it's important that we have a synopsis or even a more detailed treatment. Like Alan Wake, I don't know, like probably we ended up having a story treatment that is like 30 to 50 pages long, detailing the whole story from the beginning to the end. We keep on iterating that with different leads of different departments, trying to kind of like up to a certain point, and then we just leave it behind and don't bother going back and updating it anymore, because we have moved to scene outlines and screenplays. But a lot of it is from very early on all the way to very late. It's an iteration, and it's a conversation that this doesn't work. We need something else. Okay, we'll go and change this scene. We are out of budget. We can't do this many cinematics or cutscenes. We need to find another storytelling method for these elements. Okay, we go back and we iterate. A lot of back and forth.
So in Alan Wake 2 specifically, this kind of completely explodes how many different media there is presented. Have you counted how many kind of, because games are this composite form of art.
Yes.
So like how many things have you now put together in Alan Wake 2?
I'm really happy about this side of things, and I've been always feeling, starting with Max Payne and the comic book, and kind of radio play on top of it, that you can use these other mediums as part of a storytelling inside the game, and you can make it work. Alan Wake is great for it because, like, really the lore is that under certain strange conditions, works of art can change reality. So here in this game, especially, the idea was, let's bring in a lot of works of art of different kinds. And Alan Wake is a writer, so we have manuscripts of 2 novels. Like, one is static when it comes to the experience, and you get to read fragments of it. The other is something that you are actively working on your plot board, your whiteboard, although we ended up like making it visually slightly different.
Here we are.
And this is the other board, which is the case board, Saga Anderson's Crazy Wall with the red string and mapping it out. So player is actively taking part of the story as well. But then we have a lot of live action, which we shot very traditionally in a studio. We built the sets that match one-to-one to certain game locations, and with actors in the set shot. Minutes-wise, it's live action around a full-length feature film. Then we have art photography from Alan Wake's wife, Alice Wake, who is a photographer, and that plays a role. We have quite a few tailor-made songs that are very key to storytelling and plot, like Poets of the Fall, the band taking once again the role of Old Gods of Asgard, our fictional in-world band, and this time around with many other song makers as well. We were making songs where the lyrics are all about the story and extending the storytelling. So yeah, quite a few different forms.
Is it spoiling if we talk about all of them? Because
well, like I think yes, it might be, but I don't think that should be like come back and watch this later after playing if you are afraid of spoilers.
yeah, I mean, for instance, musical
Yes.
form in the game.
Yeah, like I love musicals. Growing up, I loved Fred Astaire and Gene Kelly and Singing in the Rain and things like that. and more and more through years, I've been thinking about an idea that it would be wonderful to have a musical sequence inside the game, and I tried to make one happen for Control, but it was scoped out because like there were many things and it just felt like too much, and then I was thinking that okay, for the next one.
Nothing is too much for Alan Wake 2, I guess.
Yeah. Well, it was like there were discussions because it's a very, very complicated thing that we managed to do with it.
Yeah.
It's the normal gameplay, but on top of that we have the live action, and then we have a dynamic song that reacts to how you are progressing through, and multiple actors singing part of the musical, and all of these kind of additional things to our normal mission building pipeline. So we were trailing behind in production with this one, and there were some discussions that can't we just cut it? But I was like, no, no.
It needs to stay.
And really happy that we didn't, because like the reception has been wonderful, and people just seem to love it, and yeah, even ended up doing a live performance at Game Awards, which was hilarious and once in a lifetime.
That's like I think that it fits very well to the gamer audience to feel a bit like loopy in your head to hear the musical parts. So great.
I mean, to me it was very important also that even though we are creating a horror game, and this was our learning from Alan Wake, the first game, where we were calling it a psychological thriller, even though it had some horror elements. It caused confusion in the gamers. They didn't quite know how they are supposed to think about it. So we wanted to course correct that for the sequel now, and game genre-wise, this is a survival horror game. But it always felt important that because this is an Alan Wake game, at the same time that it needs to contain these different tonal things, like there are idyllic daytime vistas and quirky small town, larger than life characters, and a lot of humor as well, and just the crazy dream reality that the dark place is, just felt very suited even for a musical.
Is there now something that you wish that you could do in another production in terms of forms of art?
There are plenty of ideas. Like I've this, like from creative perspective, what I've found is that I remember early on starting out that I felt very protective about ideas, and almost like being slightly wary of presenting an idea, not to lose it. But what I've found is that ideas bring in more ideas. Like I don't think a creative person never runs out of ideas. Like that's a natural resource that just keeps on coming. So yeah, like. And always, through all of these years, it's always been that the previous game project, things that we tried, things that we learned, are just giving new ideas. So there are plenty new ideas for things to come.
We might see them in the next
yes.
one then.
If we get lucky, all of us.
Yeah. Let's go back to kind of working with the linear and interactive media. You have the live action production that was done. How does it differ between, like, how do you, like, because you work with actors that work with linear media and other people as well. Like, how do you translate to the team? Like, how does it differ from when you work with the live action folks?
The approaches are quite different. This is what this like talking about learnings from previous projects. Quantum Break, where the mad ambition was to create a whole TV series inside the game. uh, there, from the production angle, the learning was that these are not compatible. That creating a game, as we talked about earlier, is very iterative. Like, you have an idea, but most likely that's not what the end result should be, because there is plenty of trial and error and prototyping and iterating and polishing. Whereas live action production is very linear. You write a screenplay, you plan the shoots, you schedule the shoots, you shoot, you do the post work. And that's how, sometimes you'll do some pickups if they are needed. But like, so these models are very different. And we were struggling a lot with that in Quantum Break. Having learned from that, for Alan Wake 2, first of all, the whole live action crew was not a separate thing, but very much we hired them to work in conjunction of the whole project. Anssi Määttä is a wonderful live action director, and Mikko Riikonen is part of Remedy team. He's our cinematographer, and so they know the game side, and our live action production also, because it's fragmented and there are these different things, it was relatively late, so that the iteration in a lot of connecting pieces was already done, but also we could do these smaller shoots kind of staggered through the project, and that's how we managed to do it.
Also, the main actor came in and out, and
yes,
was
like
part of the process.
Yeah, we shared majority of the actors between game and the live action content as well.
So how then, you worked with a lot of Finnish musicians in this production on top of the Poet of the Falls. Like, how does that work? Like, just open up a bit of that.
Yeah, well, poets are wonderful friends, and we've been collaborating ever since Max Payne 2 end credit song, Late Goodbye. And then in Alan Wake, the idea of in-world fictional band came to be, and they jumped into that role. This is part of like different mediums telling parts of the story. It just felt like an idea that if we could have in-world songs where actually we are talking about the story in the lyrics, that they are very relevant, and we were creating these scenes, and they've been with us through many games now. But then more and more I started thinking that we could expand on this idea, and for the first Alan Wake and Quantum Break especially, we were licensing songs, because both are kind of like episodic. When it comes to the pacing, we had this end of episode song in a TV series type of a way, and I really wanted to do it with Alan Wake 2 as well, but started thinking that could we somehow actually collaborate with song makers to create these songs on our own, and so that all of them would be done in a similar way as Old Gods of Asgard, and all of the lyrics would be about the story. So Ville Sorsa from Remedy got in touch with the Fried Music, Jukka Immonen there, and they started talking, and then we were collaborating with Fried Music, and my learning is that a lot of songs these days are done with song camps. There are song makers coming together for a couple of days to jam and create songs for a specific artist or specific project, and that's how it was done. Now the Fried Music songs, the chapter end songs that we have 7, we had a song camp with the Fried Music. They brought in 20 plus song makers from around Europe and all over the world. You know, that Kisu was there, and Sunny, and you know, these like well-known Finnish artists. I presented the game, showed trailer, showed material. I had written kind of a themes and synopsis of the slots where the songs were meant to be, that this is Alan Wake's song. He's been lost in this ocean of darkness for 13 years and struggling to escape. And then I brought in a couple of poems that I had written on the theme for each song, and handed these out. Groups were divided into different studios, and they started working on the songs. And in 2 days, we had something like 23 demos for all of the different slots. And I had the wonderful task of choose 7 out of these, which was really difficult. And then we continued working and kind of like refining the songs into their final form. It was a wonderful experience.
Sounds like a game jam in a way. So we're inspired
Yeah, I'm
by
sure.
that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, yeah, we're jamming everything this day. So, like, one of my favorite actors of, like, I think a lot of us, at least the Finns, agree, is the actor of Ahti. So you brought these kind of Finnish elements. A lot of the Remedies games, they don't happen in Finland, even though they're made in Finland. But is now the right time of the world to bring a bit more of the Finnish content also to the
Yeah, I
games?
believe so. It's also right time for me, I feel. Like I feel we've had it in a more subtle way, maybe through the years. You know, it's very much about American popular culture, and the games are located in fictional US. But, you know, Max Payne, the worst winter storm of a century, so very much, you know, coming from our climate, although, of course, you have that in New York as well. Pacific Northwest as a setting for Alan Wake, you know, it's grander in many ways, but still forest and small town and sea, by the sea, and all of these elements felt, you know, close to home in that sense. Through my love of Lord of the Rings, I got interested in the Norse mythology, you know, Edda poems and all of that. So this Viking fiction has been present, you know, in Max Payne already, and Old Gods of Asgard as a band is another example. But more and more, I think it's growing older and being more nostalgic and appreciative of my own culture here. I've started putting in Finnish culture. Ahti was the first thing, I feel, and Ahti was this kind of a breakthrough, I felt, when I presented the idea of Ahti as a character. You know, had a call with Martti Suosalo, and he was totally on board immediately. Like, he was feeling that okay, this is something new. I want to learn new things, and he came in, and I wanted Ahti to speak in rally englanti, you know,
Rally
this
English, yes.
race driver, you know,
Up in the ass of Timo.
very thick accent. I have a thick accent, but you know, that's something more. And Martti, though he's not used to working in English, his English was still too good when we tested.
Yeah.
So what I ended up doing is I ended up writing in the screenplay all the Ahti lines phonetically. Not in English, but phonetically as
Oh my
you
God.
know,
Yeah.
race driver would, you know, that kind of a very blunt accent.
Yes.
And then it was like magic, and he got it immediately. And you know, at Remedy, it's these days, I mean, for years and years, the official working language, like we have here, has been English, and I think over half of the people are from all around the world. So them reading the screenplay, they thought it's in Finnish. And then I had to write a translation in English underneath,
But some lines are also in Finnish.
Sorry?
There's some lines of
yes,
artists.
because
Yes,
and part of that is also improvised by Martti, because we encourage that he just keeps mumbling perkele, mikä tää on, you know, these small things. Part of the performance. But I remember some of the Finns in the team were kind of hesitating.
Oh.
Is this
Is
now?
this really?
Is this slightly embarrassing? Whereas
It's too close to the home.
all the people from all around the world were really excited. Oh, this is something new, something like really fresh and exciting, and that was the reception of Ahti. Like, people absolutely love Ahti, and Martti went on to win the BAFTA or in the side role that year, and so that was, to me, that was kind of a sign that we can do more.
Yes, a green light for going more.
And so in Alan Wake 2 there is a lot more, like the whole small town of Watery, or is it Huotari? Watery.
Mother beer.
Founded by Finnish immigrants around logging and fishing industry, and a lot of descendants with kind of Finnish heritage, and Suomi Hall, and Ahti making a comeback, and Koskela brothers played by wonderful Peter Franzen, and then the filmmaker Thomas Seini, and the short film Yötön yö, and so much like just felt really exciting to put in there, and reception on all of that has been really positive.
And you probably have more ideas in your head for.
Well,
or did you shoot all of it?
This is now my mission. I'll keep adding to that until somebody comes to me like, "Hey, Sam, too much now."
Too much is too much.
Yes.
Let's prepare the audience for questions. So you have a question, you can raise your hand. I'll point out if there's more than one hand up. And there is already one hand up, actually, Emmy. So we're going to bring the mic to Emmy. But yeah, just before Emmy starts asking question, do you have like a certain Finnish movie that we know these kind of Kaurismäki movies that
Kaurismäki is wonderful,
yeah.
Of course. Yeah, there
like an inspiration.
Yeah, that.
Or does it come in your genes, the kind of the Finnishness of it?
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Like some of it. The wonderful thing to me was like Time Magazine chose Alan Wake 2 as the game of the year, and chose the latest Kaurismäki movie as the film of the year. So Finland
good
was really nicely represented there.
Let's go with Emmy's question.
Okay, thank you for the talk. Really interesting stuff. A few months ago, when Alan Wake 2 came out, there was article and a review in Helsingin Sanomat, and I remember distinctly there was a line that said that Alan Wake 2 is highly interpretive game. And indeed, Remedy games tend to be more implicit than explicit in their storytelling, and it's obviously known in screenwriting that show don't tell, but in games, I guess you could have a hypothesis that it's more of a let them play than show. So I wanted to ask, how intentional is it that you leave this room for interpretation, and how do you do it?
Yeah, thank you. Great question. Yeah, it's really important to me not to spell out answers. Going back to experiencing, say, postmodern writing as an exciting thing because it makes me think and form theories. It's almost like a game of its own between the writer and the reader. I like that as an idea. It excites me. I like that kind of content myself. And these being games, it like Alan Wake 1 starts with him narrating and talking about saying the unanswered mystery is what stays with us the longest, and that's what we remember in the end. And to me, I love this thing where something kind of like takes a hold of you and doesn't let go, and you are occupied with it much beyond when that experience ended. And that is a big part of like what I want to achieve in storytelling as well. That it feels that yes, people want answers, and sometimes some part of the audience is even annoyed when they don't get definite answers. But to me, it just feels like, in life we don't have, one clear truth. And I think that's what makes fiction interesting, especially in Control. I wanted to push it further because a lot of the story was told in the world by all kinds of documentation you could find, and there were a lot of missing pieces, even if you found all of it. And some of it was intentionally contradictory. There were, in that kind of game context, there were researchers trying to understand things that might not be something that human mind can understand, and one had one theory and another had a competing theory, and you are left into, do I believe either of these, and kind of piecing together the narrative out of that it's an active thing. It's also psychologically, to me, really interesting in the context of a game that there is some magic in making things optional and some magic in making things secret to be found and actively searched for, as opposed to holding the player's hand and force feeding them cutscenes where everything is explained. Because the temptation, you were talking about skipping things like
back in the day.
Yes,
yeah.
there is this temptation of like, this is last for 2 minutes and I need to watch this cutscene. I want to get forward with the game and playing. Reception for our short film, as an example, which also leaves many things like open for interpretation, that's found in the Dark Place cinema. It's not on critical path. It's almost something that you can miss if you turn around and walk away. But it's a 15-minute short film that kind of like has echoes of the main story in a strange way and gives you more food for thought. But the reception has been, did they really do a whole film inside this game? Did they really make it optional and a secret that you can totally miss it? I stood there for 15 minutes and then the end credits for plus 5 minutes and checked it out, everything, and it's the most wonderful thing. There is something there to kind of like actively engage the player to piece it together. Yeah.
Another question from the audience. I'm gonna have a follow-up. So, how much between the let's say I need to point out. Okay, there was the one. So the audience member with the thermos. Yeah, we're all jealous of that.
Wonderful.
But a follow-up question, in the 13, 14 years between the first one and the second one, did you follow the kind of the speculations of the fans, and did you get inspired by that at all?
Some. I'm really. Fans are important. Like they are precious for anyone creating stuff and spreading the word. I'm absolutely in awe and love people who create long, intricate video analyses of the game content and kind of piece together and form a strong theory. That's lovely, knowing how much effort it takes. So some for sure, and Alan Wake in various forms has been present. Like Quantum Break had this kind of a big child pork, crazy wall about Alan Wake lore, and a trailer kind of a sequel with some elements that are now in the sequel. And Control then like had plenty of material. So there's been this active conversation piecing these together through the years.
I remember reading that the writer's room of Lost was playing with the audience, basically, like when they guessed something and they just kind of figured out what to do against or with them. So as you were referring, there's a sort of a form of a game that you can play with the interpretations.
Yeah.
Let's have the question.
Yeah, first of all, thank you for Alan Wake 2. I absolutely love the game.
Thank you.
It's blew my mind. And you already mentioned Yöt and Yö, and I'd like to ask, what was the process of making this complete short film inside your game?
Well, pretty early on in production, it was clear that we will be, and I really wanted us to lean into live action content. Like we did a huge amount of it, but also it was actually done outside Remedy for in Quantum Break, and then we wanted to bring it in-house and scale it way back to learn for Control. So we were looking for stylization mainly, where we started blending live action footage on top of the game image. And that was very promising, and Dr. Darling's character in Control that was only existed in live action in the videos was received really positively. So it was clear for Alan Wake 2, let's scale it up again, let's do plenty more and take all of these learnings. So we were doing it in many forms, and early on I remember walking into a meeting room with Anssi Määttä and Mikko Riikonen and to talk about this, and I said to them, and then we're going to make a whole full-length movie inside the game. And I remember seeing panic in their eyes, like, this guy is crazy, like this is never going to work. And then we were iterating on it, and finally a short film did make sense, although still it was kind of a crazy thing. I just had a feeling and a lot of passion that I wanted to make it happen and make it, weave it into the storytelling a lot. The idea also was that it kind of rests, it's partly outside but partly inside, so we were taking advantage of the sets that we had already critically built for the game anyway, like Alan Wake's writer's room is part of the short film as well. So the idea was we'll use these same sets at least partly to kind of like be able to go forward, and then of course the same actors as we already are using in the game. Yeah, that was the idea. So art house horror short film, supposedly set in the midsummer in 60s in Finland, and let's go with that. And our initial idea was to shoot it around midsummer And then finally, how the schedule worked out, we were shooting most of it in February. So instead of doing it outdoors, we had to do it in studio. So we built a whole forest in the studio as well. That's making films.
It must have been really fun to work with.
Well, to me still it feels so incredible to be in a place to get to act as a total amateur, get to act with these wonderful actors, Peter Franzen and Martti Suosalo, and of course Ilkka Villi. And I feel that through the process I learned so much. Yeah.
Let's have another question. Oh my God. Okay. Let's go there. I think that I saw your hand before there in the back. And before that, there is a question from the stream. There's a lot of comments, so I hope I can pick the questions here. So, really relating to what you just said. So, being in the role of the writer and actor on Alan Wake 2, which one is more difficult for you? I guess we can guess the answer, but let's see.
Yeah, I mean, maybe it was partly because this took so long to get to it. I just had a lot of kind of this pent up drive and passion to do many things in this project, more than I have ever done in any previous project, I feel. So co-directing this with Kyle Rowley and co-writing it with Clay Murphy and yes, acting in it, writing lyrics for the songs and so many different elements to it. That was the hardest part, just making the schedule even barely something that I could stretch to be present in the different phases of it. Acting is really difficult. I struggled at the very beginning, especially, but all the actors were really welcoming and supportive, and I feel that just talking about it with them, I got a ton of wonderful pointers on that made it easier already during the process, and felt that I learned a lot. Like you should keep reading.
Yeah.
Don't hold your breath.
Right. So personal coaching from
Yes,
the very
yeah.
experienced ones.
Yeah.
Okay, let's have the question.
Hello.
Hey.
Yes. Thank you for Alan Wake also, and for Max Payne and all these beautiful games. Sorry. I have a lot of questions, but I think I ask only two. Yes. The first is, I'm not sure that this is true, but I was reading some interview that you was like D&D master or something like that. Is that true?
Sorry, can you say?
Did you was like a long time like D&D dungeon master?
Yeah, I was I said, like tabletop role play games growing up were a big part of my life, and I loved playing them. I loved writing in association with them, and for years and years I was the game master in our group and creating campaigns and materials for it.
And also, did you like was like not only for D&D but Call of Cthulhu? Is that true?
Yeah, we played that as well.
And like Alan Wake is a horror, and Call of Cthulhu is like horror style. Is this like is this help you to like create like stories from role play to video games? Like
yeah, I think that overall I feel that tabletop role playing games are wonderful place to learn two things. One is game design. I like just creating a game on paper. It is a very good starting point to understanding game design, and like I feel talking with with many game designers doing it as a profession, many of them in their background have role-playing games.
Exactly. Yeah, there's a lot of that in Finland.
Yeah, it's a good place to learn. The other thing is that for a writer having a passion to writing and starting out, a role-playing game group is a wonderful test audience for your writing. They are very eager to get more content related to this fictional world. So they are eagerly wanting you to write more, and they are giving you a lot of positive enforcement. So these two things I feel that role-playing games can give us, kind of like, you know, if you are interested in writing or if you are interested in game design, both are there. Yeah, horror overall is one genre that I do love, and kind of, you know, Stephen King, for one, is part of the inspiration for Alan Wake, and H.P. Lovecraft, cosmic horror, for sure, another.
Okay, this may be three questions, but sorry. There's a chance to see maybe some campaign or one short for Call of Duty called Dungeons and Dragons from you or something like that.
Yeah, I still keep playing when I find time. I haven't been game mastering in recent years at all. I have a group of friends who go back a long time, and they are still actively playing. Sometimes my schedules related to work are so busy that I'm not able to take part of the game. Now again, like after we shipped, I've joined the games and being there playing. But yeah, like all the materials that I've done are kind of gathering dust in the back of some bookshelf in the basement. I would maybe hesitate publishing anything like that.
Thank you. And one more
no more questions. We're gonna give the floor to the others. Just sorry about that.
Small.
No, not even a small one. We're running out of time, so we have two more questions from the audience. Sorry. So there was someone here, and then maybe another hand so that you get prepared. So they're in the way back. So this one and that one, and kind of adding to Sam's comment is that we at the Finnish Museum of Games would love to get some of your table, like a D&D materials or anything that you had. So it would be great at some point that you put the dust away.
I
consider this.
I need to dig in and see what
if
I
you
can
want
find.
to. Yeah.
Yes.
All right. Question here.
Okay. Hey. Congratulations on the amazing game again.
Thank you.
I'm curious about the inspiration of Twin Peaks on Alan Wake.
Yeah.
It was seemingly a huge inspiration for the first game, and that also translated to the second game in terms of setting. We were just in the diner here in the background. In between the first and second game came out The Return, the third season of Twin Peaks. It was a kind of a different beast to the original series, and I guess I get the same vibe between Alan Wake 2 and 1. That is also a different beast with a lot of craziness in it. I'm curious about if The Return was an inspiration, and how can it be seen in the second game, if it was?
Yeah, I did love Twin Peaks when it was airing in Finnish television way back when, and I have loved David Lynch as a filmmaker ever since. I feel that part of what we were talking about earlier about not giving answers and kind of like just evoking questions and thoughts, Lynch certainly has this kind of an approach and dream logic to many of his things that I just feel somehow that they are very truthful to me as a viewer. Somehow I kind of get this feeling of trust and enjoy the fact that not everything is spelled out. Like Twin Peaks fired up my imagination, and I very much loved it. And the combo of horror, but also then quirky humor coming together in a kind of a very, very unique mix. Return, the third season, I deeply loved it. I wouldn't lie if I say that every episode, and it was a lot of episodes, which is, he's 70 plus, and he co-wrote it and directed and edited like 18 hours film essentially out of it, and watching it, I just felt at home and warm and fuzzy and was grinning all through the way. When it came, the story for this was already kind of like in my head. It gave me confidence in some of the thoughts that I had for this. Like he does this incredible thing where we are all rooting for Agent Cooper to return as our hero, and I'm sure that the commercial aspect, the pressure must have been immense on saying he must come back at the end of the first episode, and then we are following our hero. But no, he doesn't. He comes in like episode 17 or something, like 16, and then we get to have our Cooper for 2 episodes out of 18, and all the while we are rooting for him to return, and just the structure of this one with Alan Wake being trapped in the dark place, and how I felt it should go so that his escape is earned, has some similarities, and watching it, I just got this feeling of confidence that yes, I'm thinking about this in just the right way. So yeah, I loved it. Yes.
Let's have the final audience questions. Let's have the final audience question there from the back.
Hey, thank you so much for this talk. That was amazing to hear. I wanted to ask about making changes to your writing during development process. You mentioned that if you are running out of funding, for example, you need to change cuts into something else. I wanted to ask what else influences these changes? How do you make decision at the first place how to show what part of the story, and how do you maintain the vision while making this changing?
With a lot of work and difficulty, I guess is the answer. It's Alan Wake 2 is interesting as a project from the perspective that the initial vision that we just made a PowerPoint presentation out of it is really close to the final game on kind of key parts, and that's a first for Remedy. Like all the previous ones have drastically been altered in pre-production, but that doesn't mean that big chunks of what we were initially sketching out wouldn't have been scoped out, like several missions and locations. It is difficult, like trying to do a deep, continuous story and having to cut out clear chunks of it. And when the pressure always is, we need to cut it because we are over scope and we are behind in the schedule. But what's usually not taken into account is that if you want to retain the quality, when you need to do a cut, it actually generates quite a lot of work to figure out how to patch things up and make it flow nicely again. And that's usually even to this day at Remedy underestimate it. It's easy to be too optimistic about that. So it always generates work, or otherwise it's broken, of course, because there are things missing. But yeah, even in this, we cut out some of the locations and missions. From positive perspective, usually if an idea is really good, I feel that even if we need to cut it out, and this has happened several times in Remedy history, it tends to find a new home in a future project, and sometimes even a bigger role. And kind of like, so killing your darlings is I tend to kind of like encourage my team when working on it, is that we might yet do something wonderful with this part in a future project. But also from the perspective of when we need to cut out something or do a change, a mental trick to kind of spin it around is that we are now iterating. Like in the previous phase, we were past iterating, now we are back to iteration, and this is an opportunity to make the whole thing better. We can now find ways to improve what we have around this as well, that we were already willing to say it's good enough, but now because of these cuts, we have to go back. Let's find ways to make it even better.
There's a question from the stream. Quite many were asking, what are your tips for the aspiring writers in the game industry? Or maybe for your younger self, what would you instruct? It's very time dependent though, but that was asked a lot.
Yeah, I feel I'm really fortunate to have ended up in games when I did, and have had this career and opportunity to do this. You need to follow your passion, and if you really want to write, then write, and it really is simple as that, and you know, collaborate with friends. Like it can be tabletop role-playing games. It can be a small indie game. Like you know, just find ways and outlets for your creativity. And of course, you know, now these days it's wonderful that you can find education, which wasn't the case for me back then. So study it and of course then apply for jobs. But just like, you know, the blurry line between a hobby and a profession is something that is a wonderful opportunity, and there are different ways of just, you know, pushing your creativity forward, even if you are not hired by a game company immediately.
How about Game Jam?
Yes, for sure. Exactly.
That's good.
Yes.
Okay, one very last question is that you started with that throughout the 13 years the publishers might like have different tastes or different things were happening in the industry. What are the current trends that you're following? What are the leads for the future?
Yeah, obviously, like just like work-wise, we are in a slump, and a lot of news about people losing their jobs and being let go. I would still be optimistic that these things tend to be once again that pendulum swing. Will come back and things will look better after a while. Games are wonderful in the sense that there are many things happening simultaneously, many different things. So there are all kinds of different opportunities of different scale and sometimes in the industry there is some pessimism regarding, like, you know, how the big things seem to be so driven by money and not so much with creativity, but the richness of there being so many different opportunities is that you can do many things, you can focus on many things and find opportunities with that.
There's like a diversity of the phenomena
Yeah.
in the industry. Thank you, Sam Lake, for this wonderful discussion. We originally had so much less time, and we've learned together also that 1 hour is nothing when we talk about games. Thank you for the audience for the questions. We could not address every question, and also for the stream. Thank you for activity. I think that Sam might be here a couple of more minutes if you had some itching of the questioning. But thank you so much.